Hi, this is Nate with Landmark Implement, and today I'll be going over John Deere SeeDstar 2 planters. Starting off, we've got our default planter run page. I'll talk about each of the icons on this page, what they mean, how we can customize some of these. We'll then go into the planter configuration and some of the options in there. Then we'll switch over to the seed setup and crop changeover. We'll talk about the totals page, and then lastly, the diagnostics on the planter. So working from left to right, top to bottom, the first icon we see in the upper left-hand corner is going to be our target rate of the planter that we want to run. If we have one or two rates selected, we can use this first icon to cycle through and change our default rates. If we have any more than two rates selected, we'll get an additional box that will pop up that'll let us pick one of the other 6 rates to choose from on the list. So for instance, if we had a prescription loaded in here, we could click this box, go to our next page. If we had multiple rates turned on and available, and we could pick that prescription out of the list, and then it would run our prescription rate up here at our target rate location. The next box or area over is going to be our average population. If we've got a planter that's split from left and right, or we have multiple drives, we can use this box to separate those two. This is a good idea if you're trying to keep an eye on a variable rate drive motor that could possibly be dragging down, or something on that section of the planter that could be pulling that entire average down in that area. Hitting that button again just brings it back into one big total. Next box down is going to be our planter at the glance menu. We'll see these bars go up and down as we go through the field as a percentage of how each row is performing. If we see any of these boxes turn to an orange color, that's a good indication that that row is planting above or below a set point. And then if we see this bar show a red color icon, that's indicating that that row is not planting at all. So right below that, we have our drive status bar boxes. These boxes down there will show us if our row command has been activated on that row. By using these toggles, arrows on each side, we can start to manually turn off some of those sections if we want to shut off that side of the planter. To re-enable those, we can use the opposite arrow to bring them back, or select the Enable All Sections box, which will turn all those rows back on. Normally, when going through the field, we'll see all these icons, all these boxes down here at the bottom in green color, and that's showing you that those sections are active and ready to plant. In the upper right-hand corner, this is our Quick Start Reset. So the purpose of Quick Restart is when we are sitting stationary, or maybe we've backed into the corner of the field, and we're going to set the planter down and take off. So once that planter is set down, the quick start will bring our drives up to speed faster before we hit our infield speed. The purpose of this is so we do not have any skips when we go to take off. Anytime we select this quick start reset would be if we've sat there with the planter down, or maybe we've stopped in the middle of the field and we don't want to lift the planter up and back up and take off again. By selecting this, our drive motors are going to start spinning, which will allow us to take off again, reducing any kind of skips that we have out in the field. The next box down is going to be our variable rate drive status icon. This is a pretty important tool. It's a good indicator to the operator if all the sensors are ready and in a good operating state to be ready to plant. So if we see this bottom of this triangle black, it's going to show us that the planter is lowered. So by that, we know that our planter height switch is working properly. This upper right-hand corner of this triangle icon, this is our wheel motion sensor activation. So if we've got forward speed, this is going to light up to let us know that the planter module has seen that we do have speed, which is one of the things that we need to go to plant. And then lastly, if we see this whole box lit up and turn green, then the planter will be planting and all of our drives should be spinning. Down below this, we have a couple of our counter boxes that you can go in and change. From the drop-down menu, we've got a few different options in here, a couple of our default counters. If we want to count down, we can select those on here for each one. Now these counters, we can clear these out and reset them through our totals page that we'll see here in a little bit. Down in the lower left, we'll see our current speed icon shown there. And again, with another counter, this one on the 0, which would be if we're counting, if we know we have a 120-acre field, we could enter that in our totals page, and that would count us down so we know that we're getting at the end of the field and we've not left any skips out there. Down in the lower right-hand corner, this again is similar to the planner at a glance. This information is going to show us our row unit that is currently planting at the lowest rate. It's going to show us our row unit that's at the highest given rate. Our scan box will continually scanning through all of our row units and display that rate over here on the right hand side. And then if you want to dive into a particular row that you might believe is causing you some grief, you can type that in and it'll display that number down here in the right hand side. So this is our, and all in all, our main run page that we're going to leave up the majority of the time as we're running through the field. This page here can always be accessed by coming back and selecting the soft key F for our main planner page. The next icon down is our planner setup page and configuration. In here, we're going to see a few different tabs. The majority of the time, the information that's in this configuration won't change unless we're changing something majorly on the planner, possibly configuring it for seed or something else. But all in all, this information should stay the same how it was initially set up. Under the sensors tab, you can come in here and turn off different seed sensors for some of the rows or turn them all back on. The most common thing we'll do in here is select this headland warning suppression. So that way we're not always getting a warning every time that we lift the planter up while we're in the field. Using the drop-down menu, we've got a few other options that we can select. The next one down is going to be vacuum. Again, this will have been filled out the first time the planter was set up with the correct number of sensors that are on there and their calibration value. It's a good idea to come in here at the beginning of the season and throughout the season ensure that when all the vacuums are off, that our sensor readings are all at 0. If at any point those readings don't sit at 0 when everything is turned off, we can come in here and use the right arrow with a 0 to reset those vac sensors and bring all those numbers back to 0. If we've reset those and we're still getting some readings that are changing and don't look right, that would be a good indication that we've got a vac sensor that's failed or plugged. The next item down on the list is our fertilizer option. Again, if we've got fertilizer hooked up to the factory module and that sensor harness, we'll have that filled out. And the same thing applies here. We can come in if we're seeing when everything's stationary and there's no liquid against that pressure sensor. If it's not sitting at 0, we can go ahead and reset that. On the liquid pressure sensors, it's a good idea to unscrew them completely, just because we do have times that if we've got some liquid in that plumbing line, that it will push a little bit against that sensor, and then we won't always have a stationary sensor reading of 0. So screwing that out, leaving it hooked up, and then resetting the sensor is the best way to calibrate that one. Next on the list is our height sensor. If we've got this common box selected, this will use the same starting and stopping points to run our variable rate drives on and off on the planter. This is also where you'll come in to calibrate the planter up position. We'll fully raise it, hit enter, that'll store the up position, and then the same thing for lowering the planter. Once it's all the way down, we can hit the enter button and it'll store those two settings in there. On some planters that use a rotary height switch, we can separate those two starting and stopping points for our variable rate drives by selecting the separate button. And then when that's set up, we would get a screen that we can set those 2 points if they're at a different percentage level. Most commonly, a lot of planters are left in this common mode, and they share that same starting and stopping point on the planner. Last tab we have in here under the configuration relates to our planner drives, the drive sections, and the row section control. Again, most of these are set up initially when the planner has been initially configured. There's not too many times that this would actually be modified. One of the biggest things that I always check in here is to make sure that the quick start enabled has been marked yes. In most scenarios, a grower would want to leave this enabled and on. So we'll use this icon up here in the upper right hand side to come back to this main planner run page. And then we're going to transition on to our seed setup icon, soft key H. In here, this is where we will select our current crop type. And we want to make sure that once we've got our crop type selected, that we have the appropriate disc and plate selected. So if we're running the ProMax 40 plates, we want to make sure that that's in there because those are going to be a little bit different than our standard corn plates. If we use our show rates box, this is the box that I referenced earlier. If we have multiple rates turned on ahead of time, if we're running more or if we want to run a prescription, we would enter that in and turn that in on rate number 6. So we could select any of these and change them by doing change rates, going to that number from the list that we want to turn on, enable that rate, and then we can start with putting in whatever our target rate's going to be. So maybe this one is going to be 33,000. From there, by default, the planner will go ahead and fill you out a default high range and a low range. And this is what will adjust some of our warnings that we see on the screen. You can always go in and modify these, but this gives you a percentage off of rate without getting a warning. If I hit enter, that will save those settings in there. Hitting enter again brings us back to the planner rates page. If I use this drop down on the top, this is where I can select any of my other crop types that I have pre-built in there. I can also come in and build some other custom names and edit those along the way. So if I'm switching over to soybeans, I can select soybeans there. I'd have my soybean plate at the bottom. And then again, we've only got that one plate to select in there. The next icon down on our list, we'll jump back again into our main planner run page and then come down and select our totals page, soft key I. From this page, these will show you your resettable counters that you can always bring these back to 0 for 1 and 2. And then this last one on the list, this would be where if we wanted the acres to count down to 0, that's what this icon means. So if I knew that I had to plant 120 acres in a field and we had that entered in, as we go and start planting that field, we're going to see this icon count down. So I know when I get to the end of the field that I should have that basically down at 0. Over on the right-hand side of this page, we're going to see our lifetime hours on the planner and then also our lifetime acres that are covered on the planner. These two are not editable and will stay with the life of that controller and planner. The last box down here at the bottom and our average seeds an acre, if we use the right arrow with a 0, that'll go ahead and reset some of those averages if we've got a season average in there. The next tab up here for our totals is our calculator. In here, most commonly, we use the seed estimator if we want to know, how many bags and what we're going to have for total seeds needed in the field. The last icon on the lower right-hand side is our Planar Diagnostics and some of the tests that we have available on the planner. So the first page under the readings by default will come up with our planner. The biggest thing we'll look at in here is our planner software version number. And again, we'll see some of those hour meters displayed at the bottom. We can drop down on some of these tabs to see some other good information. If we believe that we've got something acting up on the planner, we can use some of these readings to help diagnose some issues to figure out if we've got a sensor issue or possibly a wiring issue. Same thing with the voltages. This is going to be a good indication that if we've got good voltage back to the controller and some of the sensors that are on there, if we're seeing these deviate, then again, we would know that we need to look into either likely in any of these a wiring issue or a sensor issue. And then lastly, if the planter's got EPMs on it, we can see the current status of those. The next tab over at the top is our test tab. This will allow you to go through all of these tests on here and test any of these components. And the first one is our seed tubes. So if all of our seed tubes are reading proper voltage, they're coming back, we'll get this warning that shows that all the seed sensors are operational. If we've got a seed sensor that's acted up or failed this self-test, then it'll show us what row unit we need to go look at and address. If you're diagnosing some seed tubes, we can use this seed drop test to go in on a few particular rows, drop some seeds down and see what that count is to make sure things are functioning properly. One of the other big tests that we'll use on here is this VRD, the variable rate drive motor valve flush. Over time, some of these valves can get a little sticky. And so what this does is pulses that valve at a higher voltage to help clear any debris out. So for part of that, what we need to do is select a flush time. The maximum time limit that we can put in here is 3 seconds. And then we do need to be driving at least 2 miles an hour with the planter down or the height switch disabled. And what this is going to do as soon as we get to that point or lower than that height switch point, it's going to go ahead and pulse these drives and spin them to help blow any debris or anything else that could possibly be stuck in there. Again, I'll go back up here to the upper right hand side, and that'll bring us back to our main planter page again.